Welcome to Managing Big Data. This is video 1 out of 4 for class 1. Now, before we start, I would like to extend a very warm welcome to all of you for attending this class. So this is class Managing Big Data, which is Tech 50761A. That is the course number at HEC Montreal. Now, a few things before we start and go over the course structure, evaluations, and the contents. I just want to put a few disclaimers here. The first one is that this course is not a technology course. We will, of course, talk about technology, but technology is not the end of the course. We will look at it as a means to reach an end, and everything will always be placed within the context of creating value in the organization. The second thing is that it is not a data analysis course. So we have fantastic courses that will teach you how to apply statistical methods, machine learning, and other sophisticated inference methods that you can use when you use big data. However, this is not the purpose of this course. This course is about teaching you about big data. So we will see what big data is, what it means for organizations, what it means for project managers, for example, and really what are the implications of this sort of change in gears that we have with data nowadays. The other topic we will cover is strategy. What will be of high interest for us is really why big data matters for organizations, because that is a fundamental question that needs to be answered if we want to be able to create value with big data. The third aspect is management, how organizations actually leverage big data. What are some of the pitfalls that we have to look out for? How do we manage big data projects and initiatives? How do we design a big data program? How do we make sure that there is an alignment between the strategic objectives and the actual implementation of big data initiatives in the operations side? The last thing that we will look at is IT, so information technology, in terms of what are the tools that we have at our disposal nowadays when we talk about big data. Although it is not a technological course and I will not be teaching you how to use these tools in great depth, I think it's still important for you to have a certain degree of data literacy and a certain degree of technology literacy, as you will be probably required to interact with people who are using these tools. So the technological component is very important when we talk about big data, and I want you to have an understanding of why we do things in a certain way when we talk about big data as compared to the way we probably did it when we were more in the traditional use case for using data and leveraging data in an organizational context. So very briefly about me, my name is Gregory Vial. I have a PhD in information technology from HEC Montreal. You can check the link for my homepage on the HEC website. The best way to reach me is via email, gregory.vial@hec.ca. In my previous life, I was a software developer in logistics. So I spent 8 years working in a company that does logistics software in distribution centers. And I was focused more specifically on data management, both in terms of operations, so optimizing transactional systems, as we call them, and we'll talk about this throughout the course, but also on the analytical side. So how do we optimize data that we want to use for analysis purposes? My research interests are primarily oriented towards managing data and software development. Because of my professional career, I am very interested in these issues, and some of the answers I couldn't find when I was working, I sort of fall back on my academic background to try and study them. So the types of research questions I study include things such as how do organizations leverage big data to create value? There's a lot of hype surrounding big players that manage to really have a competitive advantage in terms of how they use big data and what they can extract in terms of value and insight from data. However, the reality is that for most organizations, it is quite complicated to achieve, and I'm interested in figuring out how this takes place in what we would call more normal organizations, or more like your regular type organization, for example, that has been around for many years, has legacy systems in place, has existing processes in place, some of the companies that are not digital natives, for example, and these kinds of other contexts. Other questions that I'm interested in are, for example, how do we manage AI initiatives? So when we talk about artificial intelligence, Is it a data project? Is it a software development project? Or is it a blend of multiple disciplines that we're trying to mesh together to create value for the organization? If that is the case, how can we manage those projects to ensure success? So these are the kinds of questions that I'm interested in as I work on my research. And as you can see, there will be some overlap with the topics we will discuss. It is of great interest to me, and I hope that I can share some of my passion for this topic with you. So, course overview. Essentially, as you know, this is a 1.5 credit course. So we have 6 classes. It is an intensive pace that we follow. We meet twice a week. And the topics that we discuss for each class are set, and there will be assigned readings. However, I often adapt the contents based on student needs and desires. So if there are any topics that you think we should be covering that we are not set to cover, please do not hesitate to reach out to me and we will see how we can accommodate it for the class. Now, the actual course overview. The way it works is we have our 6 classes. So every class will be dedicated to a certain topic. In class number 1, we will look at the foundations of big data. So what is big data? Sort of try to start our reflective efforts into what is big data, how it compares to what we call regular or traditional data or small data, and what it really means for the organizations. What are the technologies that are available for organizations that use big data, and how do organizations actually use big data? What is it that we can go and get with big data? In class 2, we'll look in more depth at big data initiatives. So how do we select a big data project? How do we design a big data program, for example? How can we manage an actual project once it's underway? And who are the types of stakeholders that are involved in a big data initiative? So we will discuss things such as what is a data scientist, what is a data engineer, why would you need both when you do a big data project, and really some of the roles that are very different from traditional IT-oriented types of projects. But we'll also discuss the fact that these initiatives do require involvement and participation from a number of other stakeholders who are not data scientists or data engineers, because at the end of the day, we are trying to create value for the organization. The third topic is that of data integration. So data integration is one of the most comprehensive, complicated topics that you can think of when we talk about big data. There are many reasons for this. We will go at length about some of those and some of the most frequently encountered when we're trying to do big data projects. But at the core, what we're interested in is why data integration matters. How can we actually integrate data? What are some of the patterns that have been used in organizations? What are some of the newer patterns that we have at our disposal? And what does that change for us when we're trying to leverage data to create value? We'll also look at questions such as, well, who is responsible for data integration? Who is accountable? Whose responsibility does it fall under? Is it the IT function's responsibility, or is it the responsibility of other stakeholders? Is it a shared responsibility? Those are all questions that will allow us to dig deeper into really the complexity of how data lives within an organization. In the fourth class, we'll talk about governing data. So the topic here will be really primarily about data governance. And in discussing data governance, we will also touch upon data quality, which is a huge issue in big data. We'll think about whether data governance is a project or it's an ongoing effort within an organization, what it is that we mean when we talk about compliance. Can data governance actually foster innovation, or is it typically more perceived as a way to build walls so that the data is always protected and security is the primary concern of the organization, for example? And we will look at examples of how we can effectively use governance as a way to enhance innovation rather than prevent it. In the fifth class, we will discuss what I call thorny topics. So there's a lot of discussion these days about the role of big data and what we're able to achieve with big data. And it's important to understand that throughout the course, yes, we'll be interested in big data for itself, but it's always within the context of using this data to do certain things. This can include analytics, artificial intelligence, building predictive models and whatnot, machine learning, you name it. But the point is this data will be used for a certain purpose. And we will discuss what that means when we think about the legality and also the ethical aspect of using and producing big data. We'll discuss frameworks such as the GDPR, which is the RGDP in French, which is the data protection regulation that exists in Europe. We'll discuss some other frameworks that exist, such as the Canadian Digital Charter. We'll talk about some of the players that are not very well known, but play an incredibly important role in the big data world, such as data brokers. And we'll discuss ethics as well in terms of thinking about if something is legal, are we able to actually do it? Are there any moral issues that we need to consider? Trade-offs between short-term performance and long-term implications of doing certain things with data within an organizational context, and for also the various stakeholders who will be impacted by our use of big data. The last class is really split in two. Essentially, we will do a bit of a closing the loop on everything we have discussed for the past 5 classes, and I'll be bringing the class to an end, and we'll discuss any remaining topics that are of interest to you, and we will go over group presentations, and I will go over this in a few seconds, but essentially you will work in teams to prepare a group presentation that we will record and share with the rest of the class prior to our last class. And in our class meeting, we'll actually be discussing the various groups' presentations. So that about covers everything we have in our program. As you see, it is quite broad. We'll talk about many different topics. This will provide you with a very solid foundation to understand the role and the implications of big data in organizations nowadays. Now, with regards to evaluations, there's a number of evaluation points in this course. The first one are individual evaluations. You will first have to complete what we call preparation questions. These will be worth 30% of your final mark. So essentially, you have to pick 3 questions, each worth 10%, and write a document that contains your answer to these questions. So the way this works is for every class, 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5, I will post 2 to 3 preparation questions that relate to readings, case studies, material covered in the videos that you watch prior to class. And this will provide you with material that you can leverage to provide answers to your questions. And your answers should be based on a critical thinking about issues that we discuss in class and some of the questions that you have. So the idea is that out of the 15 or 10 questions that will be offered throughout the entire course, you have to pick 3. You write your answers to the 3 questions in a single Word document, and you have to send me this document no later than 1 day after our last class. So essentially, if our class finishes on May 7th, by May 8th, I should have received your document with your answers to the 3 questions. So even if you pick a question that is from class 2, you do not have to send me the answer until the end of the course. So you can take your time, reflect on the topics that are most interesting to you, and then afterwards submit your answers in one document. To submit your answers, you send an email with the document attached to gregory.vial@hec.ca. Please include 50761, which is the course number, in your message title. That helps me filter the emails and ensure that I do not lose your submission. If I do not have a submission, I will remind you, however, but it really helps me sort of funnel emails and get them in the right folder so I can focus on the course with the right emails right away. Now, the other individual evaluation that I'll be doing is participation. So my expectation is that you come to class prepared, having read the material, having watched the video material that will be uploading for you. And based on this, you will be able to participate in the class. Now, our participation would be based on 2 things. Because we're having our class in a virtual environment, there will be an asynchronous component to it, which will be based on the use of a discussion forum that will be made available to you on ZoneCours, and you'll be able to participate at your own leisure before or after class in an asynchronous manner. The other way I will assess participation is through synchronous discussions that we will have when we actually meet virtually for every class. So as I will explain later, we will spend a certain number of time meeting together every week on a platform so that we can discuss things sort of face-to-face but virtually. And this way we'll have an active discussion on the topics of the day. Your final exam is your last individual evaluation point. This will be worth 35% of your final mark. It will be a take-home case study-based exam. Now, the other important evaluation that you'll have is a group project, which will be worth 20%. What I want you to do for your group project is to work in teams, and the number of students per team will depend on how many students are enrolled in the class, but essentially, I want you to think about how you want to help a company leverage big data. Now, the company may already be using big data, but there has to be an opportunity to do better, or it may try to start using big data, and in this case, you have to think about how you can get things started. If you're thinking about a company that is already using big data, you have to find how you have to change things so that you can take advantage of an opportunity. The idea is you want to design a strategic initiative. Now, within this initiative, I should know what are the current challenges and opportunities for the firm, why and how big data can help address these opportunities and challenges, what is the program that you're proposing. So more than just right now what you want to do, but what is your vision in terms of how big data will be leveraged by this company, and then where you want to start. So if you design a program, what do you start with? Which project would you do first, and why that would be the first one you would do? I also want to know what are some of the pitfalls or specific challenges that you envision when you think about this program for the company. And then what I want you to do is to record and post a 15-minute presentation of your analysis, which will be uploaded and shared with the rest of the class. And these will be made available prior to our last class together. What will happen afterwards is during our last class, we will go over each presentation. We won't watch them together, but we'll discuss what we've watched and what we think about each presentation, some of the arguments that have been put forth. We'll look at comparisons across presentations to find out similarities, discrepancies in terms of how big data can be used. And this will give us a good idea of some of the common aspects of big data, regardless of the industry that groups have picked, but also some very specific aspects that we'll see emerge based on the kind of initiative and the context where it has to take place. You are absolutely free to pick any sort of organization, be it public, private, not-for-profit, a government agency. In the past, when we'd have this class face-to-face, I've had fantastic projects that cover mining industry, covering public agencies, healthcare agencies, the education sector, really private companies that have to redesign how they want to use data for strategic purposes. So there's a lot of variety that you can do here. And if you have any questions or concern about the company you're thinking of taking for this project, feel free to email me and we'll work together to see if it works well for your project. Now, during class 3, I'll check that everyone has a group, and if anybody does not, we will find you a group that you can be assigned to. I do not need a written report. I will not be taking written reports submissions. That is why your presentation really counts, and your 15 minutes really has to be thought as a pitch that you're doing to try to sell your initiative to top management. And I'll be playing the role of top management who has to be really sold this initiative. Now, some advice: consider this as a pitch. You want to kickstart a long-term program. This is not a one-shot. Any type of organization works, as I've said before, and if you have any questions, contact me at gregory.vial@hec.ca. In a typical class now, this is how things will proceed. Before class, I will be posting some video material between half an hour to 45 minutes that will split in 3 to 4 little videos that you can watch at your own pace. Now, this is part of the time that we would typically spend in class when I present material. Since we meet virtually, I will not be doing that in real time. However, I am providing you with the videos prior to class so that you have a chance to watch them at your own pace. And when we actually meet, we can have an in-depth discussion rather than me just presenting material. During class, we'll spend 2 hours together from 9 to 11 on Tuesdays and Thursdays to have a real-time discussion and Q&A. All right. And the idea here is that we can jump in and have 2 hours of intensive discussion because we will all be prepared, we'll all know the material, and we can discuss things based on also the preparation questions that I will provide you. After class, if you have any further discussion points that you'd like to bring up, if we don't have time to finish everything, but there's more to cover, we will use the forum, which is essentially a place where we can have asynchronous discussion and Q&As if we need. And this would also be part of your participation marks. So if you haven't had a chance to come out and talk while we meet together for our class, you can always participate using the discussion forum after class and have your voice be heard in a different manner. Now, very important here is how we will communicate. Because it is a virtual class, there's a few challenges, and I'm trying to make this as engaging as possible for all of us. So the way we'll work is we'll use several tools. The first tool you can use to reach me is my email. The second tool we will use is called ZoneCours. Now, ZoneCours is a course content management system that is used at HEC. The way it works is this is where I will upload slides, links to the articles you have to read. Really, the course contents and all the written material will be provided on ZoneCours. And this is also where we'll have our forum, which will host our asynchronous discussions. Now, when we actually meet to discuss things in real time, live together as a class, we'll be using Microsoft Teams. So this will be used for synchronous discussions during our meetings for every class. The way it works is you can sign in Microsoft Teams with your HEC email address and password because those are connected to your Office 365 accounts that you get with your registration at the school. I will be creating a private group and I will send you an invitation to the group, probably with a code so that you can access the group and join in the discussions that we have. The group will stay the same for our entire class, our entire course. However, I'll be sending you an invitation to join us in our group, which is called a team, essentially in Microsoft Teams, for the rest of the course. Some ground rules for our in-class discussions. I will act primarily as a moderator. My intention is not to be doing presentations of material when we meet together. My intention is really to try to be there to help steer the discussion in whatever way you want us to go and whichever direction you want to take this within the boundaries of the topic of the day, of course, unless we've decided otherwise. But we do have a large group, so I'll try to moderate the discussions as well so that we can have a lively but somewhat structured way of discussing things together. When we start our class, please try to keep your mic muted. This will avoid a lot of issues with feedback, involuntary sounds that emerge from someone and we're trying to chase whose microphone is still on. So when you log in, when you go and join our group for our class, every Tuesday and Thursday from 9 to 11, start off with your microphone muted. I will have my microphone unmuted and I will start the discussion so that then we can get the ball rolling. After I bring up a point or I ask a question, essentially I will open the floor so that you can add or say something as well. What you can do instead of opening your mic right away is use the chat window on the side and type call or wave or put an emoji to signal your intention to speak. And this way I can keep track of who wants to talk and keep a sort of list of people who want to bring an intervention in the discussion in the right order so that we have a sort of structured way of moving forward with the discussion based on the order of people who have manifested themselves. After class discussions will take place on the ZoneCours forum. So here it's asynchronous. So it's very easy to have a more slower pace of discussion. And you can take advantage of that if you want. If you haven't had a chance to talk during the class, or if you don't feel like talking during the class, but you have something you want to bring up, feel free to use the forum for that purpose. We'll be happy to read it and we'll be happy to respond to it as well. Remember, if you have any questions of concern or concerns, do not hesitate to email me, gregory.vial@hec.ca. I am extremely happy to have you with me for these 6 classes. I look forward to getting into the material, but I really look more forward to getting to know you and having discussions about big data. I think it's a very interesting topic. There's a lot that has to be said. There's a lot of things that are happening right now in this area. It's a really exciting time for this topic, and I really look forward to having discussions with you. And I hope that everything we learn in this class you enjoy and you use it in your careers. And that is it for this first video. Thank you very much.